that. I don't know, whatever. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start. The other day, not too long ago, I was talking about how there was something hinky about democracy, and it wasn't really the gold-plated, thing that we hold up. And what I missed was it's actually the tyranny of the 51%. Democracy is not actually a representative kind of let's all make the best decision we can system. It's just tyranny of the 51%. And so the founding fathers created a republic for a reason, a democratic republic, but a republic nonetheless. And here is just a little meme that I found. And I was like, oh yeah, and somebody in the comments of that video where I was talking about there's a problem with democracy, but I can't remember what it is, said it's basically just the tyranny of the 51%. But America is not a democracy. They say the word democracy is not in any founding documents. It's not used in the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, or the Constitution. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for dinner, says Ben Franklin. Democracies have been found incompatible with personal security or rights of property, and in general being as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. James Madison, between a balanced republic and a democracy, the difference is like that between order and chaos. So they try and have chaos in order to bring order, right? So maybe we do need a republic. Democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. Right? So people lost their jobs for COVID, tyranny, et cetera, et cetera. Democracy allows this tyranny. And that's not great, right? That's not great. And the big story in Canada, of course, is treason. And we've got Jennifer, I think it's Jennifer O'Connell, talking about boo-hoo, get over it. Jennifer O'Connell, boo-hoo, get over it. This is the big political story in Canadian politics today. But the treason is the overarching big story, and it's still big enough that people are talking about it, but I think that they're just going to skate on by. I don't think they're not even going to slow down. We're going to continue doing this climate change thing. Climate change is the worst thing in the world, blah, 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 blah. And don't pay attention to the treason that's happening right under your nose. Here's a water main break to distract you, right? It's weird. Diagolon Studios is responding to themselves. And I just wanted this for the definition of treason. I could have found a different one, but Fun Mode is saying, in Canada, treason is defined in the criminal code as killing or harming the monarch, the queen or the king of Canada, or like the king or queen of the UK, who is also our monarch and represented by the Governor General, waging war against Canada or trying to overthrow the government, helping an enemy of Canada during war or armed conflict, conspiring with others to commit treason. So those are the main tenets. And here, Colin says, isn't it funny how Canada's government actually has a list of MPs that are guilty of textbook treason, and nobody will give us the names? Wouldn't that be complicit to treason? So like that's number 4, right? Like if I know that you committed treason, okay, and I had the names, and the police said, you tell us right now, Mark P, who is it? And I was like, if I don't tell them, I'm committing a crime. Right? And so it seems like the people who are hiding the names from the Canadian public are also committing a crime in the same way. Isn't that number 4, right? Isn't that conspiring with others to commit treason? Like, I'm not going to give them up because I like them and I don't really like you that much. So, right? Isn't that treason? Jagmeet Singh is not going to drop this government. He says none of his NDP party members are part of the foreign interference scandal, and he has top secret clearance, but he's not had the classified briefing on who's involved. So he doesn't know. He's just speculating based on what he knows. This whole thing, I don't know how they're not going to have an election after this. And I don't know how we're not going to, I think, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be an election called. We're not going to know who, like we're not going to have names of the MPs who were involved in this whole thing. And that's how I think the election is going to go. I think somehow there's going to be an election, and somehow we're not going to know any of the Chinese names. Bookmark this. Here's Jagmeet Singh.
Confidently that none of those MPs are in your caucus or have been in an NDP caucus federally?
I have no reason to believe and no evidence in front of me, and I've heard.
He hasn't gone to the security briefing. There's no reason. Why would he have evidence in front of you? He's the leader of the party. They either try and keep it on the down low, or he's got payments of his own, right? I have no evidence, no reason to believe. I haven't done the security briefing yet, and so I have no evidence and no reason to believe. Seriously, this is an answer. And people will use this like, oh wow, he said his caucus is totally clean. It's like, you didn't look though, so I have no reason to believe that. Yeah, well, because nothing's changed since yesterday, and yesterday you had no reason to believe that either, except that now this whole scandal's exploded, right? But according to him, with regards to his caucus, nothing's changed, right?
I have no reason to believe and no evidence in front of me, and I've heard no information that in any way suggests new Democrat members of Parliament. But I want to get more information. That's why I requested a classified briefing. I will be receiving that briefing and looking at that information to confirm that.
So he won't be able to talk about what he sees in the briefing. So it's useless. And it mutes him. It makes him unable to talk about it in a way that's full. Mercedes Stevenson says, some critical thinking on CPC's demand for government to release the names where it becomes challenging. CPC says, the Conservative Party says that they want names but don't want the security clearance to see the classified documents. Those documents would have key context regarding allegations severity. I'm told by a number of sources who have been familiar with allegations against parliamentarians, so this is not familiar with these specific allegations, but general allegations, that there's a wide range of what the intel says. It does not have the same number of sources or credibility or severity. There's nuance. Seeing context would help party leaders decide how to act. RCMP Department Commissioner Flynn made it clear this morning that not all allegations could be criminal. CSIS director indicated something similar. The bar to be removed from caucus is not criminal behavior. However, well, what's his name? Marwan Tabara, I think that's what it is, was criminal, right? And like, he wasn't expelled from the House of Commons. He was removed from caucus. He was removed from the Liberal caucus, but he wasn't expelled from the House of Commons. And I mean, he broke into a house and was like assaulting people and stuff. So pretty crazy stuff, right? So the bar to be removed is not criminal behavior, but we've seen people who have committed criminal behavior. What's his name? Raj Grewal. There were some gambling debts that were problematic, right? So anyway, back to this. However, it would make sense that party leaders might want to know the intel about the alleged behavior, what it involved, how it was reported, etc., to make a decision on that person's future in the party. When it comes to the Conservative leader getting a security clearance to see the documents, I'm hearing a split. Some experts say he's eligible. Two senior national security sources told me they believe he would have to submit a security clearance. He's the leader of he's the leader of the other party. One said something interesting to me. Mr. Polyev could be briefed, but could not see raw intel without TS clearance. Also interesting because it raises questions around what privy councillors have a right to see versus the national security establishment applying the same rules to MPs as their spies. So the whole thing seems kind of hinky to me. And the leader of the opposition, I mean, it could be that the leader of the opposition is placed by a foreign group that has control of Deloitte, that has control of the Dominion machines. And so a security clearance might make sense. But you'd think that there would be some kind of security battery at the government side anyway, before the leader of the opposition can take their seat, you would imagine, right? Like, just like any MP, probably, right? No? So it's interesting. It's interesting that they're saying to me, or that they're saying generally, that the leader of the opposition doesn't have the security clearance to see this intel about treason in the House of Commons. It seems odd, because you'd think that, like, hi, I'm the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Hi, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Here's your seat. You're an MP. And as an incoming MP, here's the battery of, things we need to know about you and so on and so forth. You would imagine all of that stuff happens. You get read in, you understand your responsibilities, right? Like, there's some basic thing. Like, when you get hired on to have a sensitive job at Apple or something like that, and say you're in charge of some app servers or something like that, like, that's an important job, right? Like, you get read in. It's not like, oh, well, we understand that the server's down, but we don't know if he's got access. It's like, you're part of the people who work on this. right? Like you're part of the government, you're the official opposition. So there should be some kind of, you have to be this tall in order to ride. You have to have this kind of security clearance in order to be the leader of the opposition. And so part and parcel to your, welcome day orientation, here's your security briefing, or here's your whatever it is, right? Like it just feels like, I don't want to go too long on this. I probably already have, but it feels disingenuous to me. It feels like a bullshit excuse. Let's talk about this boohoo thing. During Foreign Inquiry Committee yesterday, this was the actual response to Conservatives' demands that they release the names of traitorous MPs who cooperated with hostile foreign governments. Frank Caputo says, if you needed a single sentence to show this government is on its last legs, here it is. Jennifer O'Connell says, boohoo, get over it. And she does. Jennifer O'Connell is replying to Mercedes Stevenson. Mercedes is reporting this whole thing. Mercedes says, O'Connell, to the Conservatives demanding the release of names, boohoo, get over it. Mercedes, this is a mischaracterization. I was responding to a frustrated CPC's MP complaining with points of order because their juvenile theatric attempts to generate dishonest social media clips failed spectacularly. Anyone can watch the interaction to see your claims are false. Hi, Miss O'Connell, we'll be posting the video. And they did post the video, and here it is. So it's as ridiculous as you think it is. This is the important part kind of here. We'll just listen to the second half because it makes more sense. It might be worth it to listen to the beginning, but it's just kind of chaos in the room, and people are trying to assert who's talking, basically, but there's a lot of chaos. Anyway, let's listen from about halfway. Here we go.
I think it's important to have a context to these comments.
Mr. Caputo's round at the end, Ms. O'Connell was literally shouting at him across the floor, and now she's saying, "Boo-hoo, get over it."
So, like, you could hear her in the background saying, "Boo-hoo, get over it."
Now she's saying, "Boo-hoo, get over it." Respectfully, Chair, I think you should call this member to order. It is a point of order. You're shouting, shouting at another member.
So we'll start it over now. So like that was the part where Garnet Genius is saying, like, listen, like you have to bring this member to order because this is crazy. And the chair kind of just sat there. There's also some kind of weird delay on the mic. Like they speak and the mic is, I don't know, a couple of seconds long or late. But here's how the meeting sounded just before that. Okay, and you can hear O'Connell in the background heckling the whole time.
Mr. Harper's government, we did not get a report that said foreign state actors had infiltrated. Under Mr. Harper's government, we did not have reports saying that foreign state actors had dealt with this.
Mr. Harper's government in 2013, CSIS publicly identified an increasing risk of foreign interference in our democratic institutions, and the Harper government did absolutely nothing. So again, Mr. Chair, I think it's important to have a context to these comments.
Mr. Caputo's round at the end, Ms. O'Connell was literally shouting at him across the floor, and now she's saying, "Boo-hoo, get over it." Respectfully, Chair, I think you should call this member to order. It is a point of order. You're shouting, shouting at another member. No, sorry, I've got a point of order.
Speak to the chair, please.
Great.
I hear you.
Right. So very weak, very, very. Well, it's interesting how disrespectful everybody's being. And it, again, seems like a distraction taking us off what we actually need to be worried about, which is foreign interference, foreign infiltration into our government. Unacceptable. Canadian girl says, they had us beaten and trampled. They froze our bank accounts. They gave a Nazi a standing ovation, and now they've committed treason, and none of them will give up the names. Canadians need to get angry, and we need to go to Parliament and demand change. Sure. Yeah. Do you think if we go to Parliament then, do you think that we will have the Emergencies Act called on us again? Right? Like, do you think if the truckers show up, they'll be thrown in prison like Tamara Lich, et cetera, or treated like the pro-Palestinian protesters and somebody buys them coffee, right? So I don't know, man. It seems weird. The whole thing seems sanctioned, right? Certain protests are sanctioned, and I'm not saying that Canadians shouldn't get angry and go to Ottawa. It seemed quite impactful last time. This time we shouldn't leave. This time, either Trudeau leaves and the government collapses and then an election is called, and we know the names, or we stay, right? And so I don't know. But Jack Pozo says Bannon is being sent to prison for the duration of the election. It's not just Canada that's ignoring the will of the people. It's everywhere, including the United States. Trump is facing house arrest or prison time, says Jack Pozo. 80 years after D-Day, our own governments are locking up their political oppositions. So that's like no joke. That's what's going to happen if people stand up and try and put right what they're breaking. On purpose, they're breaking, right? And they're doing this to bring to fruition the food shortages, the prohibitive costs, breaking business, destroying the middle class. And it's not good, right? It's not good. And it's moving really slowly. So people think that, I just have to kick harder to, keep treading water here. I just need to kick a little harder, make a little bit more money, right? We can keep doing this. It's no problem. We'll just use a credit card a little bit, make ends meet, make ends meet, make ends meet. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And that's the point. And eventually you can't make ends meet. And eventually they'll hand you cricket flour and say, good luck. Tommy Robinson says the absolute state of this: statues of British military leaders are to be removed in Glasgow because some of the people depicted in it had a hand in colonial atrocities, using air quotes. Work to revamp George Square in Glasgow will start in January, when all 11 statues will be put into storage. These are communists. They're removing and destroying our history, and they're doing it so they can rewrite history.
Acknowledging the fact that they were part of such an integral part of slavery and colonialism is important, and taking it down is quite a good stand on showing that they don't condone the ways in which it was built.
No, I'm not in favour of taking statues down now. They're a fine part of the city's history, and the Glaswegians, I thought, would be proud of it, yeah.
They should stay with an explanation as to why they're there, and explaining that they have been part of that, because you can't eradicate history.
Just by them not being there doesn't mean it didn't happen. It did happen, and I think it's good to be reminded that we're not all perfect and we have evolved.
Well, I mean, we're from America, and it's been happening all over our country, and I absolutely believe they should come down.
It's like taking the crown jewels out of the...
Frickin' Americans. Come on, communists. Elon Musk is responding to UBC's job posting. Is that even legal in Canada? Yes, it is, Elon. Yes, it is. They hate white people, and they want white people to not have jobs, weirdly, right? But if you're a disabled white person or a gay white person, then fine, right? So long as you're not male. Old green one says, yes, it's completely legal to take public money from a 70% ethnic European tax base and then openly discriminate against them. Then turn the knife while it's in our back and use that platform to spew racism and misandry. Yep, sure do, right? Here's a National Post article that says, behold the shattered wasteland of liberal government credibility. It's hard to remember a time when faith and trust in the federal government were at such a low ebb. And it's for a good reason. Yeah, I guess so. This is paywalled, so we won't be reading it today. But it's interesting that the hate for Trudeau is coming out. Somebody was saying, I was talking to somebody yesterday or the day before, and I said that I think that Poilievre will actually be worse in the long run. It'll be a short reprieve. Things will probably get cheaper in the short term, but then global pressures or something like that are going to come to bear. And I think Poilievre will continue doing the globalist plan. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm terribly wrong, and he surprises everybody. Quebec adopts a new law to fine people who intimidate or harass politicians. I wonder what the definition of intimidate or harass is, right? Quebec's legislature has adopted a law that includes a fines up to $1,500 for anyone who intimidates or harasses a politician. The Coalition Avenir Quebec government has said the law is necessary to stem the rise in resignations in elected officials, particularly at the municipal level, but critics have said it threatens free speech rights. The government introduced the legislation shortly after an organization representing Quebec municipalities released a survey indicating 74% of elected municipal leaders reported having experienced harassment and intimidation, and that 741 out of 8,000 had quit since elections were held across the province in 21. Just because people quit. Like, if you enter a job, if you go work at a pizzeria and then you find out that you hate making pizza, or if you are a customer service representative, I know some customer service representatives, and customer service can be real tough these days. And so maybe you find that's not for you. Maybe you find like you're not really interested in in being nice when somebody's being vile to you, right? Or whatever it is. And then you quit. Like that. I mean, like, sure, customers could be trained up maybe to be better, but I don't think fundamentally creating fines in order to protect specific people in a specific job is a good idea. Having a protected class is not a good idea. And so I think this is a very, very possibly well-intentioned bad idea, but I don't actually think it's well-intentioned either, because when they define what intimidate and hate is, or intimidate and harass is, it'll be talking about you with suspicious eyebrows on YouTube or unsanctioned video platforms like wherever, Rumble or X or CanadaPoly.com, right? The horror, right? So like that's the kind of crap I'm worried about. These people are going to use these laws, these quasi laws, and their justifications to crack down on people like me. And other people who are trying to speak out about the madness, right? Because that's what it is. Tommy Robinson gives us an update on the Slovak Prime Minister, Rob Fico, who survived multiple gunshot wounds in an assassination attempt on the 15th of May, has released an address to the world blaming in part George Soros for the attempt to end his life. So it's 15 minutes and it's all like it's in his native language and it's all translated into English in the bottom. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet, so apologies about that, but that's an interesting update if you ask me. Here is Phil, and he says, hopefully you're not trying to get anywhere near Times Square right now. Streets are blocked with protesters who are misled by the media into believing that Joe closed the border by executive order. It looks like pro-Palestinian protests, but these protests are not happening by mistake, right? These protests are being coordinated and paid for by the same people who are trying to get rid of people like the Slovak Prime Minister. Mocha says Khalistani separatists gathered in front of India's consulate in Vancouver with effigies of Indira Gandhi and her Sikh bodyguards who assassinated her. The effigies of the bodyguards were depicted with weapons, and Indira Gandhi's effigy had bullet holes. Gandhi, India's first female prime minister, was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards after she ordered a military operation against militants using the Golden Temple, Sikhism's holiest shrine, as a base. Today, the Khalistani lobby in Canada, through MPs connected to the World Sikh Organization, demands that the deadly riots following Gandhi's assassination be recognized as a genocide. So this is just further stuff that didn't used to happen in Canada and is happening now, right? Like, these people are going to start a war, and I don't want to be at war with India. I don't want to be at war with anybody. We don't have a military, and we don't have any kind of moral high ground to say, we're better than you, or we're going to fight a war over this, blah, 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 blah. Why are we importing this conflict to Canadian shores? Why are we starting fights with India about things that Canada really doesn't have a position on, but segments of the Canadian population who have been imported into Canada do? And that's a problem, right? Like, I don't want war. I don't want war because, man, like, do you know what that does to this chocolate cereal futures? Skyrockets, man, skyrockets. So I don't want that, right? Also, death and destruction and all the rest of it. So I don't want that. And I don't want Canada being a flashpoint for conflict, especially with this kind of crap happening. And it seems like it's the same crap happening in here, New York. It's a bit different, but the same crap happening in schools across the United States and Canada. They're all disruptive. They're all violent. They're all doing this in order to destabilize our society, and it's working a treat, right? And people are too afraid to speak up about it, but we should not tolerate this kind of stuff. We should not. Rex Glazier says, other than Nazis, who even thinks like this? A bill making its way through the Canadian Parliament would impose draconian criminal penalties on hate speech and curtail people's liberty in order to stop crimes they haven't yet committed. And this is not an overstatement. This is The Atlantic writing about this. It's kind of an opinion article. And here's our Attorney General and Justice Minister, Arif Varini. He says, we need to define hatred in the criminal code. We need strict penalties for violent acts of hate. We need the ability to stop an anticipated hate crime from occurring. The Online Harms Act does all of this. The Conservatives need to get on board now. What? There's a lot wrong with what Verini's saying here, and the commenters are absolutely bang on correct. They all call him out. And Tamara Litch starts us off. She says, 2 questions for you, sir. How do you criminalize an emotion? Is stating that a certain section of society should not be tolerated, I think we can both agree what that insinuates, would be considered hate speech or a hate crime? Steven says, I'd much rather we define treason in the criminal code. We need strict penalties for treasonous acts against the public. We need the ability to stop an anticipated treason from occurring. Yep. Natasha says the state doesn't get to control people's thoughts and emotions. The Criminal Code of Canada covers actual crimes, not thought crimes. This isn't Minority Report. Stop welcoming into Canada individuals from cultures which aren't conducive to assimilation with our values. Having imported the hatred of the third world, the government now wants to restrict liberty of thought and speech in the name of fighting hate. So among its many other problems, mass immigration is a threat to our most basic freedoms. This government will regard that as an added advantage over and above the import of loyal voters and the swamping of the old population. Yeah, we're being replaced. So on one side, Verini's talking about how we have to stamp out potential anticipated hate crime, but car thefts, if they're by a specific population, listen, that's not even really a crime. The video says, Teresa Doncourt from the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers says auto crime laws should not be toughened because it will disproportionately affect Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities. It's rich, right? Like on one side, how dare you think about committing a hate crime, and we have to crack down on that and make sure that we have a legal mechanism to make sure you cannot commit a hate crime. But if you're Black and you want to steal a car, how does that make any sense? And not just Black, Indigenous and racialized communities, right? This is 50 seconds of nonsense. We'll just listen to some of it. There we go.
Thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers, also known as CABLE. We'll be focusing our comments on Division 35 of Bill 69, the proposed amendment to the Criminal Code for auto theft. CABLE appreciates the concerns about the rising levels of auto theft in our communities. However, we do not believe that the proposed amendments will make our communities safer. There's an immense amount of research that shows that harsher penalties are ineffective in deterring crime. Policies rooted in the belief that
unless you get them before they've committed the crime, in which case, thumbs up.
That a tough on crime approach will reduce crime rates are without empirical support. What there is evidence of is that these policies have a disproportionate impact on Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities who are already overrepresented in the criminal legal system.
If they're already overrepresented, that just means they commit a lot of crime. And maybe if they stop committing crime, they'll stop being overrepresented. And that's not a fault of the laws. The laws that Verini are proposing are bad laws. And a lot of the, we had mandatory minimum sentences for violent crime and all sorts of stuff. And they're saying, oh yeah, this is totally racist. We can't do this kind of stuff. And now things are worse than they've been in a long time, crime-wise. And it seems like people think that there's no way. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful